everybody, Spooky Marshmallow here, and today I am going to talk about something that I just recently discovered and was so intrigued by this and shocked, and also I cannot believe that I am just now hearing about this. It is called the Bridgewater Triangle. The Bridgewater Triangle is an area of about 200 square miles within southeastern Massachusetts, claimed to be a site of alleged paranormal phenomena ranging from UFOs to poltergeists, orbs, balls of fire, and other spectral phenomena. The term was coined by New England-based cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman. Sorry, I apologize about that. I can't get my mouth to work right today. So this is a map of the general area of where the location would be for the Bridgewater Triangle. This one's going to be a long podcast style video because there's many different things that I want to cover within this. So just stick with me here. There is some good stories coming up. There's some murder and mayhem and paranormal, everything you would want in a podcast. It's going to be in this video. So just bear with me here. And I am doing this kind of like presentation style instead of doing a voiceover. Because for me right now, it's just easier to do it this way than to plug it all in and then do a voiceover. It really is. So let's get started with our first location inside the triangle. And that's going to be the Freetown Fall River State Forest. That's going to be our first location. So, this forest has a very dark and sinister reputation. It is known as the Cursed Forest of Massachusetts. In November of 1978, the corpse of Mary Lou Arruda was found tied to a tree in the woods. She was 15 years old and had recently been abducted from the nearby town of Raynham about 2 months prior. James M. Cater was tried 4 times for the kidnapping and murder of Arruda and eventually convicted. In 1980, police were investigating a murder near the forest, and they were approached by a number of locals who claimed to have witnessed satanic cult activity in the woods. Some believe that these reports were connected to the so-called Fall River cult killings. And so I am going to, after I get through the triangle information, I have information about those Fall River cult killings that I will go over because it's pretty interesting. And those occurred during this same time period. So they felt that all of that was connected. Suspicious clearings stained with animal blood were found in the Freetown Forest. Curiously arranged carcasses of cattle were later discovered in those woods, which, led, the locals to believe that that was proof that there is satanic activity going on there. The forest was also the site of 3 more murders. In 1987, a homeless man was somehow mistaken for an undercover police officer and killed in the forest. How does that happen? I'm intrigued by that story, but I couldn't find any more information on that. But, was there, a drug deal going down or something, and this homeless guy just happened to stumble on it, and they thought he was a cop, so they shot him out of paranoia? How did that happen? And, why would you just randomly shoot someone in the forest? That story, I don't know. I mean, I kind of wonder if that even happened at all, actually, to be quite honest. I don't know. I couldn't find any more background information about it. It's a big mystery. In 2001, 2 men were found with bullets in them on Bell Rock Road, which winds through the woods. Now, see, that right there tells me that just sounds like there's just drug deals going on in the woods. There have also been numerous assaults reported along the perimeter of the forest and along its paths. In 2006, reports of roving and aggressive dogs and an escaped emu plagued the area, rushing at visitors. That's interesting. In May of 2016, wires were found stretched across frequently traveled paths through the woods. They believe the wires were put there to catch off-road motorbike riders across the neck and decapitate them. Which, once again, if that's a drug den, then, they want to stop people from coming in there. And, if maybe there's a lot of bike riders and motocross riders that like to go through the park and they didn't want to be disturbed by them. So they put those wires up. I don't think that's supernatural. The supernatural reputation of the forest is equally formidable. The woods have allegedly been the site of blood sacrifices, which we just talked about. UFOs, which I couldn't find any information about what UFO sightings have gone on at the forest. Ghosts, same. I could not find any information about ghosts being sighted in the forest. Black helicopters, same. No stories about people actually seeing them. Mysterious orbs of light, once again, nothing. Strange disappearances, which, yeah, I couldn't find any, detailed information about strange disappearances, but I'm wondering if they're just saying that because of, that girl had disappeared from the town or whatever and was found in there. Giant snakes, once again, I could not find any reports of anyone claiming that they have, that they had saw the giant snakes. Poltergeist activity, no information about that. And even abductions, no information about that whatsoever. But then this also ties in with the whole drug den thing. If people are going in these woods and they're doing drugs, then no wonder that they're seeing a bunch of this stuff. I mean, it could have been the drug use because, like I said, I could not find any information that detailed the accounts of these things that were just listed that supposedly happened in that forest. Many people believe that the forest exerts a dark influence that drives people to suicide. Okay, once again, no reports of suicide that I could find on this forest. While even older legends assert that Pukwudgies, interesting, humanoid creatures from Wampanoag native tradition are known to stalk the woods. These are little, furry looking things with long, sharp noses and big, pointed elf ears type of creatures. There are more than 50 miles of unpaved roads and paths that wind throughout the forest. Other than the shady stuff that goes on there, apparently it's a good place to hike, bike, ski, and dog sled. Let's see. It is also believed that the Fall River cult murderers Carl Drew and Robin Murphy conducted rituals in the forest, even potentially having a hut in the middle. And I will talk about Carl Drew and Robin Murphy after I get through the triangle. Let's see. Assinet Lodge, a high-up rock outcropping that overlooks a black pond. People are said to see phantom fires, spook lights, and even full-bodied apparitions on the ledge. But most hauntingly, non-suicidal people are said to get a strong urge to jump off it when they reach the top. So I'm assuming right here, non-suicidal people. Okay, well, once again, I could not find any information about any of this actually ever happening here at the forest. So this just tells me that it's, so far, this forest is just urban legend, I'm believing. Okay, let's move on. It's just frustrating. Like, they claim they have all these claims. Well, where are they? Because I couldn't find any information on any of this. Okay, next up we have it's called Profile Rock, and it's and it looks like a man's face, obviously. It was thought to be at one time the Wampanoag chief Massasoit Sachem. I hope I didn't just butcher that name, but I probably did. The face in the rock had not always been there and appears to have come into existence sometime in the mid-1800s. And it, the local tribes, they believed it to be the face of their great leader, the Sachem, father of Philip of King Philip's War, that would later take place. Some believe Philip spent the night beneath the rock and the evening before he died. While the rock definitely looks like a face, it is unknown whether it actually looks like Sachem. Profile Rock was also known as Old Man of Joshua's Mountain, taking a name from Joshua Tisdale, a settler that once owned a deed to the land. But no matter what you call it, the rock had garnered an air of the supernatural. Local legends of ghosts, satanic cults, and murder surround the site. It became a frequent target for graffiti in modern day, and this just happened recently and has closed off that area permanently. Apparently, it's fallen. It is no more. It has crumbled to the ground, and it does not exist, and that area is permanently blocked off, and you cannot visit Profile Rock anymore. Next up, we have King Philip's Cave. One of the more famous locations is called King Philip's Cave in Norton. It is known for its connection to a dark time in Massachusetts history. The Wampanoag leader, Metacom, also known as King Philip, led a rebellion against the British colonists from 1675 to 1678. And this little rock structure is said to be the place that he hid late in the war. It's a common investigation spot, apparently, for legend trippers. People have reported seeing floating balls of light, known as spook lights, campfires you see in the distance that disappear when you go near them, called phantom fires, and they can hear drums, known as phantom drums, as well. Now, this would be something that, that I would definitely want to investigate. But once again, where are these claims? I couldn't find them anywhere of the people saying exactly what they saw or what they heard. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So let's move on to the next big hotspot. Now, remember, this is all within the triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle. This is the Hakamak Swamp. It makes up a large portion of the wetlands, and this is south of Boston. Most of the activity happens around Lake Nippenicket in Bridgewater. People have spotted Bigfoot to giant birds and snakes. Phantom fires are very common, apparently. So are spook lights and phantom drums. Some people have said they've seen full-bodied apparitions. This, apparently, for paranormal investigation, this is the place to go. It has the most activity from what I read. But that's all I read. I could not find anything about the claims. In fact, I'm just going to say it now. Throughout this whole thing, instead of me saying it with everything on here, I could not find anybody that had spoken up and said, I actually, this is what I saw here. I actually saw this, or I actually heard this, and then gave their story. Maybe you can. Maybe you can look it up and find it, but I sure couldn't when I was doing research for this. There is a couple of people like the cryptozoologist that I mentioned, Lauren, in the beginning. You know, was she the only person that heard or saw this? I mean, maybe it's just like local, local tales. Like, if you've ever been to Bridgewater and you've had an experience, I want to know about it. We all want to know about it. So let me know down in the, let us know down in the comments section below, definitely. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to move on now. This is the West Bridgewater is where this is located. And it's a rock, and there is a poem that is etched on this rock. And obviously you cannot see it very well, but this is what the poem says. All ye who in future days walk by Nunkatesset stream, love not him who hummed his lay, cheerful to the parting beam, but the beauty that he wooed in this quite solitude. According to the plaque nearby, it was carved by the Reverend Timothy Otis Payne in 1852, who was a Winslow, Maine native. Later in life, he moved to East Bridgewater to serve as a pastor. Okay, well, where's the paranormal in that? I mean, that's a neat thing to see and all, but, there's nothing paranormal about it. So, moving on to our next attraction. The woods around Old Raynham Taunton Greyhound Track. This is what we're looking at right now. Which closed for live racing in 2009. It's a statewide ban and now offers simulcasting, also known as to be a hotspot of paranormal activity within the Hakamak Swamp. People walking around those woods have reported seeing everything from UFOs to spook lights to Pukwudgies. So I'm assuming when they're talking about the woods, like they're talking about the outer track here, I'm assuming. Yeah, like I said, this track is closed now. You can't go in it or anything. And I thought I had seen pictures where it's actually being demolished. That may be the case too, that it's actually demolished now, which is interesting, because that's a very popular thing right now. If they didn't want to do the greyhound racing, they could have done like horse racing. That's still very popular, but whatever. Okay, moving on to our next attraction. Okay. One of the weirder Bridgewater Triangle stops is on Mill Street in Easton, where there is a sign marking the site of the 18th century John Seeley sawmill. The sign says that Seeley's son Nathan was known to be a wizard who used satanic imps to run the mill overnight. One record of the folktale behind the sign recounts that it is believed the devil himself visited Nathan Seeley and was responsible for supplying his devilish but free labor force. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. So, you're trying to tell me that people believed that during the night, these little satanic imps would run a sawmill? Why the hell would satanic imps want to run a sawmill? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And that the devil himself visited Nathan Seeley, he did. The devil had nothing better to do but to go to Massachusetts and visit this Nathan Seeley and run a sawmill. Are you kidding me? This is so ridiculous. Oh my gosh. That's just, yeah, that's just ridiculous. All right, let's move on. I would have a field day in this place, but, forgive me for putting everything down, but I just, that's just how I am. Like, none of this makes any sense. It really doesn't. I think someone was bored one day and just wanted some attention, and they're like, let's create this triangle thing. Okay, moving on. So, rumors of malignant supernatural activity swirl around Taunton State Hospital. And why wouldn't it? It's a mental facility. Aren't all mental facilities haunted? It began housing the mentally ill in 1854 and is one of the most famous haunted places in the Bridgewater Triangle. According to Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle by Christopher Belzano, you know what? I'm going to get that book. I'm going to get that book and I'm going to read it and I'm going to see what all he says in that book. I want to know if, like, he has first-hand accounts of all of this stuff that they're claiming. The hospital used therapy techniques now thought of as barbaric, including submitting patients in water, keeping them out in the cold for long stretches of time, high voltage electric shocks, and of course, the prefrontal lobotomy. Well, of course. I mean, what would a mental hospital be back then if they didn't do the lobotomies? The hospital had some notable patients, including Anthony Santo, an Italian-American who, after having his mind affected by scarlet fever, experienced hallucinations. He also confessed to murdering 2 of his cousins and a 6-year-old girl by luring them into the woods and killing them with a knife and then stoning them. Okay, they're dead. Why would you stone them? Another patient was Honora Jolly Jane Toppin, a nurse who confessed to at least 31 murders after her arrest in 1901. She is known for doing painful experiments with patients and killing her landlord, foster sister, and 4 elderly members of a family she worked for. The Goss building is reportedly home to the ghost of a man in white who appears on the 3rd floor, as well as various other spirits. On the grounds, people sometimes report seeing the ghost of an elderly man walking in the grass. Has anyone approached him? Has anyone been like, hey, are you okay? Like, are you a ghost? Are you real? Maybe he's just out taking a walk. There are also reports of cult activity with the hospital's patients and staff, with stories ranging from strange markings in the basement to suicide in the name of the devil. The grounds of the hospital, which are located in downtown Taunton, can still be visited today, and some say the ghosts of the pained patients are still there. Everyone claims that the patients' ghosts are still there in mental hospitals. Every mental hospital is haunted. It's just that's just how it is. Your mind automatically goes there. Let's face it, especially when it's been abandoned and it's shut down. You know, your mind automatically goes to it's haunted automatically. That it's a thing. It makes it automatic. You know, because of all the suffering and such that goes on in those places. This one. I'm gonna believe, actually. I do believe that this probably does have some paranormal activity because of what I just said. Okay, let's move on to our next location. Okay. One of the more famous cemeteries in the Triangle is the Mayflower Hill Cemetery in Taunton. Legends have grown around a grave depicting an empty rocking chair. Some say the girl died after falling over backwards in a chair, while others say she died in a fire while sitting in a chair she was told not to leave. Historical records show the grave belongs to a girl named Pearl French, who was 4 years old when she died of spinal meningitis on March 26, 1882. The choice of an empty rocking chair as Pearl's grave marker can be explained by a popular poem about the heartbreak of child mortality published in a magazine in 1850 by Richard Coe Jr. entitled The Vacant Chair. The grave has the words, "Her vacant chair," printed on it. People who visit the grave claim to see the little girl in the chair and otherwise, as well as orbs of light flying around. Okay, so in this cemetery, and also in some other cemeteries that I was looking at from this general area, they had a lot of child graves, unfortunately. And I think that's the same with any old graveyard that you come across. I think they're all going to have, a lot of graves of children, unfortunately, because children are fragile, very fragile. And, adults didn't even live that long back in those days. And so children from disease and what have you going on back in the day, and children being so fragile back then, they died very easily, unfortunately. Most from disease, unfortunately. It's so sad. I'm blessed and I am thankful that I am alive today. I will say that. So this lady that you're looking at here, that's the cryptozoologist chick that I mentioned in the beginning, Lauren. I'm assuming that's her. I'm pretty sure it's her from the research I was doing. All right, let's talk about Aniwan Rock in Rehoboth. I think I said that right. Rehoboth? I don't know. This rock is tied to the King Phillips War. On August 28th, 1676, Captain Benjamin Church and his group of colonial soldiers captured Aniwan, the war chief of the Pukwudgie people and a chief captain of Metacomet. By then, Metacomet had been captured and killed, and the capture of Aniwan marked the final event in the King Phillips War. Local legend trippers have reported seeing phantom fires, phantom drums, spook lights, full-bodied apparitions around this rock. They say its connection to King Philip's War is to blame for its paranormal occurrences. I can get behind that. I can believe that. Because it's the same like with the Gettysburg theory, as I'm going to call it. Everybody knows Gettysburg's haunted. It has to be. With everything that went on in Gettysburg, it definitely has to be haunted. And I've seen so many firsthand reports about that. Gettysburg, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Gettysburg being haunted. It's the same kind of theory here, I believe, with this rock. Supposedly, this is the rock marks the spot where it all ended, apparently. So I can get behind it. I would think that this area would be haunted and have some paranormal activity, sure. All right, now our next location is... Okay, I don't even believe this one for a second, because every single state has this exact story in the state, kind of like the Crybaby Bridge. There's Crybaby Bridges in every state that you go to. Okay, one of the most outlandish of the Triangle legends is the Red-Headed Hitchhiker. The legend goes that when you drive near the Rehoboth-Seekonk line on Route 44 after dark, you may encounter him with his thumb stuck out looking for a ride. The hitchhiker is described as a red-headed man, usually seen wearing red flannel and blue jeans. He is sometimes reported as having been seen on the side of the road, but also as a reflection on a windshield. There's no known origin story for the hitchhiker. And local legend trippers say they've never come across a first-hand account. But the story is still likely to give you the chills when driving that way at night. Like I said, I think every state has a red-headed hitchhiker somewhere. If not a red-headed hitchhiker, there's hitchhiker ghost stories in every state, I do believe, like Crybaby Bridges. All right, moving on to our next location. This is Dayton Rock, and I hope I'm saying that right, but I think I am, but I hope I am. Let me just adjust here. Okay, that is so much better, you guys. Okay, yeah, I like that a lot better. Of course, my camera wants to act up. Okay. So this is located in Berkeley. It's a 40-ton boulder. It was originally located in the riverbed of Taunton River. It's known for its strange carvings of drawings, symbols, and writing. The rock was written about as long ago as 1680. No one is sure what language or culture the markings on the rock came from, though historians have proposed everything from indigenous American language, which that's what I think it is, to ancient Phoenician. In 1963, during construction of a coffer dam, state officials removed the rock from the river for preservation. It was installed in a museum in a nearby park where it can still be visited today. To me, that it looks like Native American writing. I wish I knew what it said, because that's really, really cool. But yeah, it just looks like Native American writing, in my opinion. I would love to see this. This really intrigues me. But once again, there's no paranormal surrounding it, so it's not, I don't understand why it's a paranormal attraction. There's nothing paranormal that's happened with it. I guess just because it's so mysterious, I guess. I think it's pretty cool, personally. Okay, and next up we have, located inside the triangle, is the Lizzie Borden House in Fall River. It's the site of the 1892 murder of Abby and Andrew Borden by X. Although Lizzie was acquitted, it hasn't stopped fascination with and speculation into the unsolved murder case. Legend trippers have said that they heard intense paranormal have had paranormal encounters at the house. They've seen full-body apparitions. They've been thrown against the wall or down the stairs by some unknown force. Some have even sworn that they would never go back there again. Today, the owners of the house have done their best to recreate it as it was. You can actually go on tour there or even stay overnight. It's a bed and breakfast, I do believe. Now, this one I am not going to discount as not paranormal because I have seen so many documentaries about this house and about the murders that took place in this house. It's on my bucket list of places that I want to see. I would love to visit the Lizzie Borden house and stay the night. That would be awesome. That's definitely on my bucket list for sure. All right, and our last location inside the Bridgewater Triangle is the Bridgewater State University. Several buildings and rooms on campus are alleged to be haunted by ghosts and other paranormal phenomenon. Once again, I find that so interesting because of the fact that, once again, every state, every university is haunted. I live in Indiana. One of the most haunted universities here is Notre Dame. Everybody has ghost stories from Notre Dame. That's just what it is. It's, yeah. Everyone has a haunted college, I'm sure. All right, so those were some of the locations, the most highly active locations within the Bridgewater Triangle. Now, if you have visited other places that I did not mention here, let us know down in the comments section below if you enjoyed it, where it's located, if you had any experiences at all. That would be great. Let us know down in the comments below. Alright, so now we are going to talk about the paranormal claims that have come out of the Bridgewater Triangle. Identified flying objects, often in the form of bright balls of light or large unusual spacecraft. Unnatural animal sightings, ranging from unusual reports of animals that are not found within the area, such as panthers and bears, to more supernatural claims of giant snakes and enormous vicious dogs. Paranormal humanoids, including sightings of Bigfoot, ghosts, poltergeist, and shadow people. Thunderbird sightings, giant birds, pterodactyl-like flying creatures with wingspans up to 12 feet are claimed to have been seen in Hakamak Swamp and neighboring Taunton and Easton, including a report by Norton Police Sergeant Thomas Downey. Maybe it's the Mothman. You know, maybe that's what Mothman is. He was just a Thunderbird. Cult activity, especially animal mutilations. Various incidents of animal mutilation have been reported, particularly in Freetown and Fall River, where local police were called to investigate mutilated animals believed to be the work of a cult. 2 specific incidents in 1998 were reported, one in which a single adult cow was found butchered in the woods, and the other in which a group of calves were discovered in a clearing, grotesquely mutilated as if part of a ritual sacrifice. Well, you know, it could have been the aliens because they do say they have paranormal activity. Native American curses. According to one tale, Native Americans had cursed the swamp centuries ago because of conflict with colonial settlers. A revered object of the Wampanoag people, a belt known as the Wampum Belt, was lost during King Phillips' War. Legend says that the area owes its paranormal unrest to the fact that this belt was lost from the native people. And last but not least, Pukwudgie, a creature from Algonquin folklore. The local Wampanoag people consider them to be dangerous tricksters, kind of like brownies and gnomes. They have been especially associated with the Freetown State Forest within the Bridgewater Triangle. So there you have it. Those are paranormal claims that have come out of the triangle. So now we are going to move on to the Fall River murders. And this is another fascinating topic to talk about. It was interesting doing the research by this, and also there's a documentary about this as well, and I did watch the documentary and I thought it was very interesting. So let's talk about the Fall River murders. Now, let me just remind you, these Fall River murders took place inside of the triangle, and inside of the Fall River area, obviously. So let's talk about that. Okay, here we go. The Fall River murders were a series of 3 homicides that took place in Fall River, Massachusetts from October 1979 to February 1980 by an alleged satanic cult. It was during the onset of a period in American history known as the Satanic Panic. And I thought that was very interesting because I have never heard of that before in my life. So I'm going to do research on the Satanic Panic and maybe doing a video about it as well. The first murder was 17-year-old Doreen Levesque. It was committed on the night of October 13th, 1979. Her body was found under the bleachers of Dynam Vocational High School in Fall River the following morning. No person was ever convicted of the Levesque murder. The second murder, 19-year-old Barbara Raposa, was committed on November 7th, 1979, but her body was not discovered until January 26th, 1980. Andy Maltius was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the Raposa murder. The third murder, 20-year-old Karen Marsden, is thought to have been committed on February 8th, 1980. Portions of her skull were discovered on April 13th, 1980. Her body has never been recovered. Multiple individuals were charged in the Marsden murder, but only Carl Drew and Robin Murphy were convicted. Carl Drew was convicted at trial and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Robin Murphy pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of an agreement to testify on behalf of the prosecution and received a reduced sentence. The Fall River murders are the subject of the 2021 documentary Fall River, produced by Blumhouse and directed by James Buddy Day. It's very good. I highly recommend watching it. So let's break down the murderers. Doreen Levesque murder. Doreen Ann Levesque was a 17-year-old resident of New Bedford who had left foster care and had no fixed address. On the night of her murder, she had traveled to Fall River to engage in prostitution with another sex worker, Gail. Witnesses reported seeing Doreen being intoxicated downtown at several establishments and engaging in prostitution on Pleasant Street. At approximately 6 a.m. on October 13, 1979, Doreen's body was found under the bleachers of Diamond Vocational High School by two joggers. They were using the school's running track, and they discovered her. She had been sexually assaulted and...
Good morning, everyone! It is now 7 a.m.
Sorry about that. She had been sexually assaulted and bludgeoned to death and was identified only after police released a composite drawing to local newspapers. I mean... She was a prostitute. It could have been anybody. Really. Barbara Raposa. Barbara Raposa was a 19-year-old single mother with a history of drug abuse and sex work. She was reported missing on November 7th, 1979 by her father after she had failed to pick up her son from a babysitter. She was last seen around 8:15 p.m. by a male friend who had dropped her off in downtown so that she could work as a prostitute. Barbara's body was found by hunters several months later on January 26, 1980, in a wooded area on the outskirts of Fall River. Autopsy reports indicated that she was killed shortly after she had last been seen. All right. Another prostitute. Karen Marsden. Karen Marsden was a 20-year-old mother and sex worker in the Fall River area who had frequent contacts with police. On the night of her disappearance, police had questioned Karen as a potential witness to the murder of Doreen Levesque. On February 9, 1980, Karen refused to identify Doreen's killer, refused an offer of witness protection, and asked police to drop her off at a church in Fall River. Karen was reported missing the following day by her grandmother. Karen's partial remains were found in Westport, Massachusetts on April 13, 1980. You see the trend there? All prostitutes. And it's my feeling that maybe it was a cop that was doing it. I mean, let's face it, she had been questioned by the police, and the police only. They offered her to go into witness protection, and she didn't even do it. And so I think it could have been a dirty cop that did it. Or it could have been a pimp who maybe the police told her pimp. So the pimp would put heat on her so that she would go and, go into hiding or whatever. Or they was just watching her. The pimp was watching her. I don't know, but it seems kind of fishy to me. But my money's on a dirty cop. All right, so now I'm going to read to you about Carl Drew and Robin Murphy. One of 3 people convicted in the Fall River cult murders is looking to be paroled after spending more than 3 decades behind bars. Robin Murphy. She says, I feel as though the board doesn't think I take responsibility for my actions. I don't know how to better express that I have. In 1979 and 1980, she was one of them that was convicted of the killings of Doreen and Barbara and Karen. Oh, all 3 of them and Karen. She was in a so-called satanic cult. And that's why that's going to come into play with the story of the killings. Murphy, who was just 17 when she was arrested, took a deal in exchange for testifying against Drew and Maltius. So there's a third person coming in, Maltius. She admitted to killing Marsden and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. With possibility of parole. In 1985, she recanted her testimony and has maintained her innocence since then. Murphy was released on parole in 2004. She returned to prison in 2011 after allegedly violating her parole by failing to discuss a relationship with a woman who had a felony conviction to her parole officer and by being in the vicinity of a drug transaction. Murphy told the parole board she lied about the murders under oath to ensure Maltius and Drew would go to prison. So she lied so the other 2 would definitely go to prison along with her. Murphy first met Maltius when she was 11. He sexually abused her over the course of several years. She later saw him with young girls and was determined to put an end to it. And she was convinced that Drew killed Marsden, with whom Murphy had a romantic relationship. So Murphy must be Maltius. So he was having a romantic relationship with Marsden, and she believes that Drew killed Marsden because of that, for reasons unknown. I really wanted to make sure Carl went to jail. This is Carl Drew. I really believed he killed my girlfriend, she said. She told me he was going to kill her, and I believed her. Murphy described her false testimony as a suicide mission and said she didn't fully consider the impact her confession would have, especially on her family. Oh, I see there. Okay, I'm so messed up. I'm so confused. So Murphy is actually the person I'm talking about. Robin Murphy. Duh. Why do they do that? Why do they use the last name instead of the first name? That just totally confused the crap out of me. Okay, so her abuser didn't like the fact that she was having a romantic relationship with Marsden, with Karen Marsden. And so that's why he killed Karen. Okay, that makes more sense. She said she feels the cases would never have been solved without her testimony, but that she now regrets lying. I feel like I should have to let it play out, she said. If Carl Drew is guilty, then it's his own battle to fight. Murphy's history includes, I'm going to say Robin instead of Murphy's from now on. Robin's history includes incredible trauma, sexual, physical trauma, and neglect. She has a positive institutional resume, which includes earning a bachelor's degree while imprisoned. But the parole board is concerned about her being on the outside and playing well with others and doing what she's supposed to do and being good. She has a record of being a drug user and a lot of unhealthy relationships, and so that makes the board nervous about releasing her. Robin said she thought when she was first paroled in 2004 that she had dealt with her childhood drama enough to avoid repeating the mistakes of getting into codependent, unhealthy relationships. but has since realized that her work was not done. After another 11 years in prison, she's made more progress, is what she said. Attorney Courtney Kenyon, who represented Robin, stressed the positive things her client has done while incarcerated, especially since returning to prison in 2011. These include becoming involved with a program to train service dogs for veterans, and unlike during previous attempts at parole, Robin has grappled with the implications that her false testimony may have sent an innocent person to prison. Which they're kind of thinking that Maltius committed all 3 of the murders, and the other 2 had nothing to do with it. One person besides Kenyon, psychologist Franklin Di Cataldo, spoke in favor of Robin's release. He pointed out that Robin spent 7 years on parole without criminal or violent relapse, saying that her age and history indicate she can return to the wider community without committing further crimes. I don't know about that. 3 people spoke in favor of keeping Robin behind bars. Assistant District Attorney in Bristol County, Patrick Bomberg, retired Fall River detective and state representative Alan Sylvia, who investigated the murders, and Patrick DeSauto, who was friends with Raposa. DeSauto described Robin as a narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic liar who, far from being the victim of circumstances, relished violence and was actually the ringleader in all 3 murders. She downplayed Robin's depiction of Maltius as a pedophile, saying he began a consensual relationship with Raposa when she was 15 or 16, when he was about twice her age. He never hit Raposa or coerced her, she said. Excuse me. DeSoto scoffed at Murphy's work with the vet dogs program and said, as a Christian herself, she was amused by Robin saying during the hearing that she wants to be released to a Christian residential community. Quote, "In hell, Robin, you won't be anybody's boss," she said. "You can't lie or pretend with God." Unquote. The parole board will accept written testimony for the next 2 weeks. It can take several months to issue a decision. So that's very interesting. I will be very interested to know if she's going to get paroled, which, number 1, I highly doubt. And number 2, if she is, oh my gosh, it's going to create so much backlash. She's a murderer. She confessed to the murders. And now she's, oh, I'm sorry I lied. Well, who does that? And someone that knew her personally even said that she's a liar. So that tells me right there that that's just 3 strikes right there. Like, yeah, she should never, ever be paroled. She should get life without possibility of parole, just like the other 2 did. All right, that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me and digging into this. Like I said before, if you've ever been to the Bridgewater Triangle, let us know down in the comments section below where you went and if you experienced any paranormal activity at all, because we're all curious to know. We all love it spooky. All right, so that's going to do it for today's video. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. And in the meantime, remember, stay spooky, my friends.